Hi, this is Lex, and welcome to the FinTech Blueprint. It's your podcast about fintech, decentralized finance, digital banking, investing, robo-advice, artificial intelligence, and all the other frontier technology that is transforming financial services. To get more content, like an illustrated transcript of this conversation in your inbox, subscribe at fintechblueprint.com. So without further delay, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast conversation. I'm super excited to have with us Dave Balter, who is the CEO of Flipside Crypto. And we're going to have a fascinating discussion today about the blockchain and crypto ecosystem, about metrics, data and analytics, about DAOs and startups and company building more generally. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Lex.
My pleasure. Let's start with trying to define an answer to an existential question, like who are you in your career? How did you start? What did you find interesting? And maybe if you could identify some key threads that were formative to your experience.
I thought this was going to be easy. Now I have to do some empathy thinking. It's be tough for me. Well, it's the who am I? I mean, generally a business builder. I mean, that's what I've been doing for the past 25 years. This is company 7 for me. So I'm a glutton for punishment, or I don't know. I don't know if I can do this again. I would just say that. But, I'm generally, I am fascinated by 3 things. One is by data, which should be obvious for the business I'm in now. 2 is community, which is really sort of how do networks begin and thrive. And the 3rd is the weirdest one, which is really psychology. Just like what motivates people. I was influenced early by, psychology, influence of persuasion, and tipping point, and all those types of things. I just find that stuff fascinating. So most of the stuff that I've done sits at those intersections. I guess to get to what got me started, I was in banking for 3 years. I ripped off my tie and decided I was going to be a writer, and went and worked as an accountant and a clerk in a little hippie store in Harvard Square. And one day the other clerk said to me, "I have a business. My partner hates me. Will you be my partner?" And I, of course, said yes. So that's what got me started building businesses. I became his partner. I hated him maybe as much as the other partner hated him. We parted ways after 2 years. I took over the company, and that journey then never stopped. That was it. I was now into building companies.
What is it like to build a company? You said this is your 7th one and you'll never do it again, but I bet when you were building your 6th one, you were saying the same thing. What is that process like? And what are some of the lenses that you need to do it well? Like, what have you developed over time to see things? How do you need to see things? And then how do you decide what actions to take? Like, walk us through making something new.
The 6th business was a business in the death industry. And to give you some idea of sort of insanity, but, working in a space trying to memorialize the deceased and seeing, going to funeral homes and talking to people going through grief every day. I don't know how I even got to number 7. That was a weird business. Also a wonderful industry that's ready for disruption. So if someone can figure it out, we didn't quite figure it out, but someone can. I guess the most, there's 2 rules, I think, in sort of building companies. So the first is, for me, it's like a noise in my head. It's really hard to explain, but like there's a moment where I see something and I can't, it's like static. I can't see anything else. Every time I talk to someone or mention something or read something, it sort of always is like pestering me, like there's something to be done here. And I think most people learn how to tune that out. There's something that fascinates them and I couldn't do that, or it wouldn't be, I don't know, I wouldn't be the right person or whatever. Like if the noise is persistent, lean towards it, don't lean away from it. And that's how businesses begin. Passion is what really makes them start. The second is really, it's not, I say this, but it's not that hard. The way I think about it is like, hey, here's an idea. I don't know, what should we call it? All right, let's call it this. Okay. Hey, should we get some some bookkeeping software? Okay, yeah, let's put QuickBooks in. Okay. Geez, I don't know, let's put a website up. And then within months, it's what? This, people think it's real. It's here. There's it's kind of a thing. And then you get a co-founder and it's all these little baby steps that if you look backwards on them, it's they're just little things, but they build up to this, it's real. And so I just tell people, it is all the little things to begin. It is all the stuff that you think is kind of irrelevant. But if you do enough of them, you have now a working clay that you can go build off of.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that the practice is more important than anything else, than the planning, the idea, the insight. It's the putting one foot in front of the other. And even if the things might feel pedestrian, the small steps are actually the important thing. How would you connect your interest in psychology with that buzzing feeling in your mind? Or would you? Are you seeing human behavior and finding gaps in it, or what's the interaction there?
I think they're different. I mean, the buzzing is more, I'm I don't know, I'm somewhere on the spectrum and I don't know which end of it I'm on. And I can't even explain what the static sounds like because I don't know if everybody has it, but it's, I don't know. I'm obsessive to a point of a fault, and I'm so flawed in so many ways. And that just happens to be the thing that comes out of all those flaws. So I don't know about that. But on the psychology side, one of the things that stuck out to me in the influence of persuasion was the story of the Hare Krishnas, the cult or whatever you want to call them, in that they grew because they used the power of reciprocity. They grew because they learned to stand in airports, and they would have baskets of flowers, and they had two sets of Hare Krishnas. They had ones out in the front who would hand people flowers for free. And they would they would be nice and friendly, but they would just be giving people flowers. And then they would sort of ask for a tip or whatever. And they, some percent would give them a tip because you gave them the flower. Okay. There was no ask. It was reciprocity that allowed that return, that psychology of behavior. Now, what was fascinating is the second group of Hare Krishnas who were all standing around the trash cans inside the airport because people would take that flower and they'd pay the Hare Krishna something and then they go throw the flower away. Those ones would collect all the flowers and bring them back to the guys handing them out at the front. I always thought that was amazing business intelligence right there. So, but it was reciprocity. It's like psychology. What do you give to somebody that gets them to take an action that you want? And so if you look at all the businesses I've built over time, and certainly Flipside, we give away all of our data publicly at Flipside. It's free. Why would we charge an analyst for that? But there's ways that we use the psychology of people's reciprocity and other things to motivate them to go do things in the market. That's what's fascinating to me. That community builds because of things like that.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that probably connects into MetricsDAO and community more broadly. But before we get there, I want to have one more question on startups. And this one's a little bit sadistic, maybe.
Ooh. Okay. And he laughs evilly. Okay, perfect. Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
What makes them hard? If it's just taking one step after another and, being a giving Samaritan and providing benefits to people, what makes them hard?
Two things. So the first is people. Yesterday, I have worked with one of my co-founders over 4 companies. He married me. He stood there and read a couple things. So, we're close. And yesterday I called him and we had both had this interchange with other leadership team members where we were chipping at each other. So I get on Zoom with him and I'm like, dude, I'm the most frustrating person ever. And he's like, yeah, but we just, whatever, we've figured out how to frustrate each other. It's like a marriage and whatever. And had this real good discussion about what we're doing. But so many times those interactions don't have that healthy maturity to them. You're fighting with people quit. People show up for a week and quit, or, they do something super nasty on the way out, or you can't hire the right person at the right time, or, you have executives who behave like children, or it's just all people. It's always people. So that's hard managing all that, and frankly, it's not about them. It's even about me. I'm a terror. I'm confusing. I don't say what I mean sometimes. I don't have a lot of empathy. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, this is like a therapy session. I feel good now anyway.
Right. Yeah, great. How do you feel about having trouble communicating your feelings?
Yeah, I don't know. They're tissues, Anyway, okay. So then the second part. Let's move off me. The second part is really, it is a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. I mean, there's so many days where you're like, oh my God, they can't get worse. Like the biggest client we had just quit, or these 4 things happen, or the biggest client fired us, or I don't know, whatever, or we failed at a financing, or we, just terrible things, like people quit. I don't know, whatever. But it's a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. You can then wake up the next day and be like, wow, great, amazing stuff is happening. And you have to become so astute at being able to ride the waves when they're really high and you think it's all perfect and everything's going to be great. You got to attempt to, hey, we got a lot of work to do, still stuff to do. And when it's really low, hey, there's going to be another day. Like it'll look better over time. And just that is a really hard rhythm to get comfortable with. So it takes time. I think as entrepreneurs, you got to have a lot of tenacity.
It's interesting how much of what you're saying reflects like the human reality and the relationship reality of making things and building companies. And I think that's often forgotten in the context of thinking really abstract thoughts, like the artificial intelligence and technology and math and data science and blockchain. But these are just tools that people put together. I think it's very insightful that for you, the hard thing is the team and managing others and bringing them together, and then managing yourself, relative to the world. So thank you for that.
The waves in this space are higher and lower and come faster than anything I've ever seen. One of the things that fascinates me about this space is you could see a company grow to the peak of its cycle and get crushed. I don't know, they got hacked, or I don't know, something happened, they got crushed. And like everyone's just like, oh yeah, all right, that happened. Okay. Oh, and you're starting, your thing failed miserably. You're starting a new thing. Great. Okay, cool. Like the like belief system in the waves as a cycle is they're so narrow. I'm like, I can't, it's so much wave motion. So in this space of all spaces, I would say you have to be really good at seeing that possibility.
So let's talk about this space and the waves. What is Flipside Crypto? It's in the name, but what is it? And talk about the waves and the experience you've had so far. Like, why did you start this company? It's quite technical, so how did it all come together?
I'll start at the last company, because how it all came together, because it's sort of fun. We were working on this death business. We were helping memorialize the deceased. That's what everyone in the industry calls it, the death business. And we would do that during the day. And then at night, in early 2017, we'd sort of run off and trade crypto in this conference room. We had a blast trading crypto at night. During the day, we weren't having so much fun. And we knew we had a problem one evening when at about 9 p.m., the head of product at this death business sort of tapped on the conference room window. And, we're like, yeah, come in. We're in there like, trading, and we're psyched and we're having fun. And, we got algorithms, whatever. He comes in and he says, hey, I just want you guys to know it feels like you've joined another tribe. We're like, what are you talking about? And then he leaves and we're like, oh God, he's so right. We love what we're doing here. And we're conflicted about this other business. So it was accidental. I think we felt a lot of pain about having to give up on a different business that was doing okay for a space that we thought would change the world. And so sometimes, I guess that's immaculate conception. I don't know what that is, but like we fell into this one. I would say, so that's how we got started. The business is, we've had emissions since day one. After early trading, we sort of looked at each other and said, blockchains is like amazing tech and all these amazing things are happening, but like the organizations that are running them are generally not sophisticated. They have either supremely awesome views about decentralization, or they're trying to build a technology, but they don't really understand traditional metrics, acquisition, retention, ROI, KPIs. Our job will be to use data to help these blockchains succeed. That is what we've said from day one, and we have had to continue to evolve the business to do that. So what we do today is we curate, access, ETL, curate clean data from blockchains. We make it publicly available. The first thing we can do to help the space is give it away. Like, everybody should be able to play with the data of any chain that they would like to understand deeply. We do that through a SQL editor, APIs, et cetera. And the way that we help the blockchains themselves is we actually use their own assets, treasury assets, delegated assets. We sort of break those into bite-sized payments, and we use those to pay analysts and developers to come solve challenges for that chain in near real time. So you need a dashboard built, great. Here's, for $500 worth of SOL, thousands of analysts can compete to build the best dashboard. You need developers to begin building apps. We can help people do that. You want people to understand the distinction in your NFTs versus others. We can give people query capabilities to go learn how to do that. And we do that at scale. We've done that up to 30,000 bounties every month, and we're pretty good at it.
What technology did you have to build, or what infrastructure do you have to maintain to have high quality data across the major chains? Or maybe another way to ask that is to say, how difficult is it to get the data and make sense of it? Like, what are the challenges in there?
Well, the best part is I don't have to do any of it. That is my co-founders. So, oh man, it's easy. No, I've been around data for so long, and I've been around this business for long enough. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but I couldn't tell you all the technicals. But I would tell you this. The beauty of blockchain is all the data is public, meaning they sit on nodes and it's sort of streaming by you. The hard part of that is it's hard to capture it well, and it's hard to turn it into a thing that can be used to effectively understand what's happening. You could look at a block explorer and see like transaction happened, but try that en masse and maybe understand why that transaction happened, or why cohorts of certain types of people will do transactions like that. That is very complex. So the work we have to do, we sit at the node level. We build our own nodes. We can and have used third parties at times, but we basically begin with accessing node level data and then streaming that into a solution that internally was early called chain walkers. We had a way of sort of transforming it into data that could be readable and usable. So, traces, logs, all those other things, but like making it really usable. The hard part then is curating it into tables and pieces that allow analysts to do much more. Here's a very specialized gold level table that is about NFTs on Solana. I don't know, whatever it is. That is an art. That is, if the first part is the mechanic, the second part is the artist. And we're really good at that. The last piece of the puzzle is really where things are getting really interesting. Is we made a decision about 2 years ago to stream all that data into Snowflake. And that, blockchain plus cloud, whoa, that's getting pretty real. We now, only early this year, we now allow organizations to have direct access to our Snowflake instance. And now what's happening is people are using that data to do all sorts of things we couldn't even imagine, build data lakes with other data sources. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think technically it's hard. I'd say the last thing is everybody in the business is of the mindset that our data needs to be right. And we have 100,000 analysts who bang away on it every day. And so that gives it a cleanliness, but we do a lot of work to keep it active as blockchains change and needs change. That's a lot of work, and we're willing to do it.
So I've had a little bit of experience with trying to build data products on chain, and I want to paint a bit of a picture of how hairy it actually is, right? So the first thing you said is that you have to run the nodes. That on its own, just running the nodes and accessing them is, a category defining company. So whether it's Alchemy or Infura, right? That's a multi-billion-dollar effort, enterprise value effort to just provide access to the nodes of all the relevant chains. Now, the good thing is, like, not all of the chains are that relevant in the sense that you don't really necessarily care about all these analytics for, I don't know, who can we pick on? Litecoin, Cardano. I don't know. Not saying anything about those chains, but even for one chain, once you do have the nodes up, the information you're getting isn't formatted or made meaningful with on-chain data. Like, you do have to parse it and lay over a bunch of intelligence on top to make sense of it. And there's constantly novel upgrades to, or like novel versions of smart contracts and novel functions. And so things continue to move and become weirder. And you have to kind of evolve the interpretation, the analytical layer on top of the raw data that you get on chain. So that's number two. Number three is there's also a difference between, like, what does data even mean, right? For an institutional investor that rebalances a fund once every quarter, just having data at the end of some reporting period in totals might be okay. So there's no timeliness to it. For somebody else, you might need data within every single transaction that happens. So you might be querying data at the speed of transactions, and you might need to get, market data in or something like that. And then there are even sort of more difficult things, like you might need application level data. So while somebody's interacting with a dApp, they need to pull in a bunch of things into the dApp to make it function. And sometimes the things that they need to pull in have to be 100% rigorous and performant, right? So if you look at Chainlink or something like that, you need the oracle to not fail, or the whole thing gets hacked and blown up in the example that you gave. So I wanted to open that up because it's such a complex, hairy problem, and then ask you to maybe categorize again, like, what does data mean? Like, how often is it looked at, analyzed, built around? Like, what's the speed of it? Maybe one way to answer that also is to say, like, what are the most repeatable use cases that you've seen that people in the ecosystem build on?
On the first part of you explaining all the difficulty of this, I'm like, wow, job security for my technical and data science co-founders for sure. Like, thank God I found them, because it took years.
From now on, you'll be nicer to them.
I'll be nicer. I'll say, I'll start every meeting with, I appreciate you. I mean, I guess that's what I should be doing anyway, but I do appreciate them. I'll send them some love through this podcast. Yeah. I mean, I know it took years, and there were parts, where I would say, like, why isn't it just, why isn't it right? And hey man, this is really hard what we're doing. Just so you know, it's not that easy to do what we're doing. Okay. Anyway, I only think we perfected the science about a year ago. It took a long time for us to get this right. So there's that. I will say the reason it's perfected is because we've given it away for free. And we have now analysts, we have, as I said, we have about 100,000 users who have registered to use the data. And that's growing quite fast. They run about 50,000 queries every day. And by running those queries, they're constantly pointing out, like, this would be useful. I think this is getting out of date, or, hey, it looks like this chain updated its X, et cetera. And that is what keeps the cleaning happening. You're basically having a resource that's touching it all the time, telling you, and we have a system by which we then go fix or adjust or adapt. That's really powerful. I think the use cases, you're seeing a couple things. The first is the lifeblood of any blockchain is the public disclosure of what's actually happening in a way that different levels of economic or technical expertise can understand, right? So I might, without a lot of technical capacity, want to see, like, can you just show me, like, how are NFTs sales growing between Blur and OpenSea? I don't know, like, just show me a bar chart. I'm super interested. There's obviously then people who are doing very detailed analysis on, all sorts of things that are well beyond me. But we're seeing these amazing charts and distributions. You probably are the type that is digesting the ones that I'm not understanding. But, like, yeah, you can't run a blockchain or have one that's effective without that data being available in near real time. You're seeing Arbitrum airdrop now. Everybody wants to understand what's happening. What percent is being claimed, what's happening with those assets. How can those assets be used? Those have to happen in real time. So I think that's one part. And the other part is really underneath that, which is around product. This type of data is what fuels a sommelier to build their products. Like, you can't build a blockchain application without having real-time access to the data underneath it. And so you're seeing lots and lots of tools get built just by accessing good, clean, effective data.
Interesting. Just one last question around this. Like, if you were to look at the data providers out there, so CoinMarketCap and Messari and Nansen and Glassnode and Dune, how would you segment them out and think about where you play relative to these others?
Well, the first thing I would say, and this is maybe it goes back to our startup discussion, which I think is fascinating, is as industries build and providers of any resource in this industry, we happen to be in the analytics side, but there's lots of different sort of ecosystems. But in the analytics side, over the course of time, your positioning and their positioning and your capabilities and theirs shifts. So day one, you might be like there was an era where I'm like, I think we're a competitor with Coinmetrics. Oh my God, I think we're a competitor. I'm an investor over there. Like, are we competing? Now we're so far from competitors. There's been eras where everybody's compared us to Dune. The way we behave is so different in our business models. Like, we're just totally different. Nansen is getting deeper now into the selling enterprise data. Hey, that might be close to what we're doing with our Snowflake access. That's cool. Okay. And so over time, you're going to see these, whatever I tell you our competitive set is today in this group, it's like by a year, you might be different. We're all doing different things. The one thing I will tell you is it is highly beneficial for any competing organization in any space to have a cordial and maybe calculated, effective relationship with others in your direct competitive sphere. Because so many things are happening, it's in your best interest to grow the space together. So one reason we pushed all of our IP into this DAO, MetricsDAO, and let any data provider play and use it and access it is because that's the only way the whole industry can evolve and grow effectively. So that's important. I would say I respect a lot of the other folks in the space. I would look, if you are trying to compare providers, always start at where is the data trusted and where do customers use that data to make good business decisions in ways that they are confident can lead to outcomes. And that's probably where you should play if you're thinking about data providers. That's where you should play.
I think one of the places where you're quite differentiated is MetricsDAO. Can you talk about the catalyst for bringing that together and who's in it? How does it work? What are the tokenomics like? Starting with the genesis of it.
Yeah. So the genesis actually came from a sort of pretty public interaction between us and Dune. We had a Uniswap proposal that was at literally day of vote, had reached quorum of 40 million votes. And, all the right folks were voting yes, et cetera. And Dune didn't seem to like that we were going to have this big relationship with Uniswap and launch this Twitter troll campaign. And it was you can go look it up. It was an amazing day of violence, of Twitter violence, and people competing priorities. Anyway, that it got killed. It actually, at the very end, the voting mechanism broke, which is another fascinating, funny part of the story. At the time, it wasn't that funny because we lost the thing. But we said, wow, that was really rude of Dune. But more importantly, there's something wrong a little bit we're like a Web 2.5 business in a Web 3 ecosystem. Like, we charge blockchains. We're picks and shovels. Like, it's not quite fully Web 3. And so, what would be Web 3 for our model? We're like, well, Web 3 would be to take all this IP where we can run all these bounties and motivate people, and we give it out to the market. We give it away. We'd like Genesis, everyone could use it. And so in October of 21, we did that. We donated all of the IP of that to this DAO, MetricsDAO, and Genesis members were Andrew Hong from Mirror, who's now at Dune, and Dr. Eth, who is at Rabbit Hole, and people from 0x, people from the Graph. And we literally said, here's what's going to happen. This capability is now available to any data provider who wants to use it. We're going to build a smart contract run system to have requesters look for insights to get developed and analysts to be able to earn capital for solving those challenges. It can happen at any size. If you go to hire Flipside, we're a very expensive offering, maybe, or premium offering. So we can't run one-off challenges, but MetricsDAO can. If someone wants to show up and say, I have one question, I'm at Tiger Global, and I have one question about anything in analytics, blockchain for sure, but this system is open. Anyone could run any analytics challenge. Any data provider can now become a sort of usable or can use this component system. Okay, so that was October 21. Over the last year and a half, it's now has more than 5,000 analysts in it. It has been used by Uniswap and Aave and a whole bunch of others in the space. There are lots of data providers in there, beginning with Dune Wizards, who are doing a lot in there, Playgrounds, Transpose, Sentio, Slice, Artemis, they're all coming in there. I won't say some of the other big names that are about to be announced, but you mentioned some before. They're all in there. And they're all able to use this smart contract protocol, which actually officially launched yesterday, I think was March 23rd. You can see people are solving challenges in there now and earning and quality controlling outcomes. And we'd like to see this become a real utility of the ecosystem. That's the goal.
I'm flipping between two questions, and I'll ask the silly one first. So does this mean Excel is dead? In the Web3 future, we're all just prompt engineers for ChatGPT 10,000. Is Excel finally dead and everybody's using on-chain smart contract data, and that's how you evaluate Web3 projects?
No, Excel's not dead. I mean, ChatGPT will take a lot of the functions we used to consider, sort of hard to get to. Can you automate your functions by just using the keyboard? Are you a keyboard jockey? And yeah, I mean, ChatGPT will make some of that easier, just like for coding. Like some of the busy work of coding is gonna go away, QA and stuff like that. But I think we have some long period of time where those who grew up on Excel and those who know how to use it effectively and get what they want, the last mile, the last 10% or 20% is always going to be human led. The singularity will come, and at that point, it won't matter if it's Excel or ChatGPT.
Yeah, it'll be the Excel singularity.
That's right. Yeah, until then, Excel is probably a little safe.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask that, besides the pun, is that many more people now are literate in writing code and being able to query a database and being able to construct something on the fly. And so it plugs into this theme of you got a functional DAO community of hundreds and thousands of people who are engaging with fairly complex technical data. And to me, I was raised on Excel, and I'm jealous of the current generation because of just how powerful these tools are.
Yeah, it is. I'm jealous too. I mean, I will say we put into ChatGPT, how can Flipside Crypto best enable its client Solana to be successful? And its response was, it was really good. So, it's beyond just Excel. I mean, there's a lot of, that's marketing or business strategy. I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit mind numbing. Now, with the strategy it gave us, it wasn't perfect. There's that last 10%, that isn't quite what we do there, but most of it's pretty good. So I've never been able to code enough, but I think it is for today's world, it's a must. I feel like everybody knows how to code a little. And I don't know. If you grew up in the ChatGPT world, maybe you don't need to code at all anymore. Now it's going to revert. I don't know. I can't figure that out.
It's a bit too early, I think, to have figured it out. And like you say, I think by the time we figured it out, it's probably other problems on the horizon. So going back to the analytics that are created through the platform, one question is, how do you see the growth of adoption and the expansion of the protocol and the DAO? Is it increased horizontal growth to cover more stuff? Is it depth of analysis to go more and more granular across different things? Is it going from analytics to strategy and implementation? Like, what are the vectors of growth? And maybe if you could illustrate some of that with examples of maybe some analytics that really made a difference, or captured the zeitgeist and were really meaningful, that could probably give us a flavor for the types of things we're likely to see more of.
Well, let me start at I think you hit it on the head. With ors in between, it's probably closer to like ands. The MetricsDAO is built on a labor market primitive. So there's a series of, you can create a labor market for pretty much anything you want to have happen. That means basically, if you want higher quality, very premium outcomes and only a few very, expert level or beyond level capable people to work on it, you can set the labor market to be a very sort of high paid outcome to very few people. The curve that you might want to design if you're trying to get a sort of crowdsourced mechanism to, lots of different results, you might change that curve so that, sort of maybe more of the masses can get involved and all the rest. That's what's super powerful about the DAO. Anything can happen. So you could look at that cube through do I want quality? Do I want different forms of usage of an API, of a data API? So like you could offer that type of challenge, like use this API to build these types of products or do these types of things. It's not just like put question in, get answer. It's using data to go create outcomes that maybe in the ChatGPT type of world, may influence new types of thinking you've never considered before, but from the power of the crowd. So all of that is possible. It has been built to be entirely open. And we already have people who've gone in and created analytics for non-blockchain stuff. Like, someone did a whole thing on Fanga, like a totally non-blockchain tech, just a tech analysis. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. That is amazing. And you don't just have to be the person who's writing or solving the challenges. Like there's a whole crew of people who just quality control. They're looking at, before anything gets produced, they're evaluating the readability of an output, a chart. They're evaluating, if you're a little bit technical, maybe the economics answer, but that's a whole nother community that's really powerful in these types of open utilities to help people do things. I don't know if I'm going to have a great answer to the specifics. This is probably beyond my, you're asking for ones that change the world or, et cetera. So I probably won't, I won't dive too deep there, but I would say if you go to MetricsDAO, you're going to see lots of challenges getting run. And, that probably is the easiest place to go find some good things.
I'm stuck on this idea, and it's sometimes embarrassing to kind of go into futurology, but I'm going to do it. I'm stuck on this idea that, we have two types of computation or programming. And I mean, end of the day, it's all the same. It's all one type, but at least naively, there's the deterministic programming, like if A, then B, if X, then Y type of rule sets, which is how we are familiar with computers working. And then there is the artificial intelligence brain, like machine learning approach, which are these just gigantic probabilistic systems that are ingesting enormous amounts of data and give outcomes, point solutions of a certain likelihood, but kind of feel like intuition. They feel like the learning of human judgment. And I think a lot of people think of AI and blockchains as different vectors, as things that don't combine or, that don't run together. But to me, what the type of thing that MetricsDAO and in general data provides is the training data set for these thinking machines, and so that's to me the amazing thing about Web3 economies, their interactions, the things that get built, is that all of this stuff is anchored into a digital chassis. And so you are constantly generating data exhaust. And unlike in the case of a Google or an Apple or a Facebook, which uniquely benefit from having proprietary access to internet scale data, in the case of blockchains, they are open by default. And you can see kind of the sediment getting built up over time, right? So you've got the core blockchain data, which is the public good, but then something like the analytics layer starts to put meaning on top of it and sequence it and make it available for others. And I think what we see today is kind of ways to look at particular snapshots or to explain situations. I mean, they could be the edges of the gears that connect into much more automated rule sets or machine rule sets that get trained on that data. So for me, it's really fascinating to think about, like how does the value chain stack on top of data and analytics, to actually drive decisions and potentially drive automated decisions on top of it. I mean, that's not as much a question as a pondering, but I wonder if you've seen any symptoms of this. Like, have you seen anything downstream from your platform that has that shape or looks like execution platforms or things of that nature?
Man, wow. Okay, that's deep, and it's like my first thought is like I'm frightened about what's possible. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would say I'm more. What I see more is the human output of that. So, like, I'm sure some of that stuff is happening, but I see more people who show up on our doorstep or in our Discord or whatever, who are like, hey, I never knew anything about coding or data science or blockchains, and I just got a job as a data scientist at a blockchain company, or I got a job at Boeing doing analytics work because I entered the machine here, whether MetricsDAO or Flipside, and you paid me to begin the journey of learning how to code and to meet other people who were interested in data science and to understand how a blockchain is queried and all the rest. And those people have now moved on to become experts in their field and all the rest. Now that, to me, that's go back to the psychology. This is the human stuff that I'm like, I see that every day. I think you are probably entirely right about what's the downstream that's going to come from all those people and people who are already educated in this and what they're going to build as AI and all the rest gets deeper. I might just be putting my head in the sand against that because I'm so interested in people's sort of human psychology and livelihood at the moment. But both are important.
I love that you bring it back to people and organizations and communities, and it really dovetails with your founding of these businesses and then the groups that you've been able to bring together. With that, if our listeners want to learn more about either Flipside or you or MetricsDAO, where should they go?
So they should go first, flipsidecrypto.xyz. There you can learn a bunch there. MetricsDAO.xyz is certainly the other spot to go and hang with all the other data providers and analysts alike. I'm on the interwebs. I'm on crypto Twitter and all the other places. I'm sure you can find me if you're looking.
So mysterious. Dave, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
All right, Lex, thank you. This was awesome.
Hi, everyone. That's it for this week's episode of the FinTech Blueprint. For more technical deep dives into all things FinTech and decentralized finance, check out fintechblueprint.com and grab a free subscription to the newsletter. This is Lex, and I'll see you next time.